A silent film of the battle, which became one of the most watched films in British history, has finally been given a fitting soundtrack.
At the Imperial War Museum North in Salford, a school orchestra has arrived. They've come to this ultra-modern location to accompany a silent movie shot 100 years ago. The film they're about to accompany documents one of the bloodiest episodes of the 20th century. Entitled The Battle of the Somme, it was made in 1916 during World War I, at the trenches where more than 1 million men were slaughtered. The museum's historian, Matt Lee, has researched the film.
This is one of the most famous scenes in the film, and this is where two soldiers bring in a wounded comrade. As you can see him being brought in from no man's land, and in the next sequence you see him being carried on another man's shoulders towards the camera. But what's powerful about this scene is that the man himself died 30 minutes after being brought into the trenches.
It's incredibly graphic, isn't it?
Well, that's what I think is special about the film. It was the first film really to bring home, you know, the barbarism and the inhumanity of war. The British soldiers are trying to give the dead as a dignified a burial as they can.
As a parent as well, if you're sitting there watching this, you're thinking, that could be my son. That must be incredibly frightening and sobering for those people watching it.
I think it could have been. I think some of the images you see in this film, you wouldn't see on news broadcasts today.
When it was released, half the population of Britain flocked to see what life on the front line was like. Now, to commemorate the battle centenary, the film is being screened 100 times over the next year, but this time with a soundtrack by live orchestras.
It's mind-blowing, really, that people were fighting in the Battle of the Somme. So I'm 19, so I could have been there.
The score was written by film composer Laura Rossi.
I watched the film and just realised what an enormous responsibility I had to write music that appropriately fits these images. So I didn't want to overdo the emotion. I just wanted to write something quite sensitive. Really, I just wanted to let the images speak for themselves.
And you visited the Somme?
Yeah, that's right. My great-uncle was a stretcher-bearer in the First World War, and it turned out he was attached to the 29th Division on July the 1st, 1916. So it's quite possible he could even be in the film. He actually survived the war, so he died when I was about 10, and this is his diary. Colonel and Captain Thomason wounded. Casualties in ambulance, about 15. Newfoundland's got an awful cutting up. German machine guns waiting for them. Terrible sights, dead and wounded galore.
It says a lot, but it hides an awful lot as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. So I went over to the Somme battlefields, took his diaries with me and read them over there and tried to retrace his footsteps. And it really made all those pictures become very real.
And here is Laura's soundtrack, performed by the orchestra from Cheetham School of Music in Manchester.
It's an incredibly powerful combination. The live nature of the music brings to life, doesn't it, those kind of slightly ghostly black and white images.
Yes, that's right. This footage we're watching now, this is probably for me the most emotional part. I really want the music to draw you into this section where we see the men smile and wave at the cameras, so that you really look into their faces and just see them as normal men.
Because we know what lies ahead for them, and in a sense, they don't, do they?
Yeah, it was really moving to see, those young kids playing how they play.
It really brings out, everything about the war.
It felt quite solemn and quite deep.
Watching this film, you realise what a tragedy the Battle of the Somme was, for both sides.
Finding a way to commemorate loss of life on this scale isn't easy, but I can't think of a better way than with such powerful music.
It is a perfect soundtrack, isn't it? It's lovely.
Beautiful.
You can see live performances of Somme 100 for yourself, and there's more information if you want it on the website.